What if one of the most talked about drivers heading into Texas Motor Speedway never even made it through practice without disaster striking? That is exactly what happened this weekend, and the fallout from a single corner in turns 1 and 2 sent shockwaves through the entire 23XI racing camp. A car that looked like a genuine top 10 contender on Saturday afternoon ended up crumpled against the outside wall, and by the time the dust settled, Bubba Wallace was staring down a 37th starting position, a backup car his crew had to prep overnight, and some of the worst pit stall selections on pit road. This is the full story of how a promising weekend at one of NASCAR's most punishing tracks collapsed in an instant. Texas Motor Speedway is not a track that forgives mistakes. The banking is aggressive, the walls come up fast, and track position dictates everything from the opening lap to the final restart. Passing is possible, but it is not easy, and any driver who finds himself buried at the back of a 38-car field faces brutal math from the moment the green flag drops. The deeper you start, the more dependent you become on caution periods, flawless pit strategy, and a healthy dose of good fortune. The energy heading into race weekend was electric at the front of the grid. Carson Hosar of Spire Motorsports grabbed the pole with a blazing 191.34 miles per hour lap, his first pole of the year and only the second of his entire career. His teammate Daniel Suarez locked up the second spot, giving Spire Motorsports a stunning front-row sweep that virtually nobody in the garage area saw coming. The front of the field had its own dramatic story to tell. But while all of that good news was unfolding near the front, things were falling completely apart for one very specific driver on the other end of the speed chart. Before everything went wrong, Bubba Wallace was giving his 23XI racing team every reason to feel confident about Sunday. During practice, he was fifth quickest in his group, posting speeds north of 188 miles per hour. He had completed 21 laps in the Chumba Casino Toyota, and the car was handling well. The team felt the setup was dialed in, the handling was responsive, and the overall pace suggested a car that could legitimately compete for a top 10 finish. There was genuine optimism inside the 23XI racing garage. Wallace was comfortable behind the wheel, the numbers backed up the confidence, and the weekend looked like it was shaping up to be exactly the kind of momentum-building run the team had been looking for in 2026. That is the context you need to fully understand what happened next, because the contrast between how promising things looked and how quickly everything unraveled is what makes this story so difficult to process. With approximately 3 minutes remaining in the practice session, Bubba Wallace's car got loose entering turns 1 and 2. The rear end stepped out sharply, the car snapped around before he could correct it, and he went sliding backwards at high speed directly into the outside wall. The impact was significant. The rear end of the number 23 car suffered severe damage, and the left front took a hit as well. The primary car was done. On the radio, Wallace could be heard desperately trying to save the situation, communicating that he tried to downshift and attempted everything available to him in those final fractions of a second, but by the time the car broke loose, there was simply nothing left to do. After climbing out of the car and speaking to reporters, Wallace addressed the crash directly. It came out of nowhere. I tried to correct it, and it was just too late. He also acknowledged the nature of the circuit itself, noting that Texas is a treacherous track and that he may have got just a little too high in the corner at the wrong moment. He was visibly frustrated but handled the situation professionally, which given the circumstances, was not easy to do. The Chumba Casino Toyota that had been fifth quickest in practice just minutes earlier was now being loaded onto the hauler, unsalvageable for race day. The fallout from the crash extended well beyond the physical damage to the car. Because Wallace wrecked his primary car and was forced to switch to the backup, NASCAR rules mandated that he go straight to the back of the starting grid. He also missed qualifying entirely as a result of the incident, which locked him into 37th starting position out of 38 cars. The only driver starting behind him is Austin Dillon, who had his own catastrophic practice day, more on that in a moment. The crew at 23XI Racing spent the entire night after practice preparing the backup car for Sunday's race. That is an enormous undertaking in an extremely short window of time, and Wallace made sure to publicly acknowledge the effort, calling his team the best group in the garage and expressing genuine guilt for putting them in that position through his own error on track. And the punishment does not stop at starting position. When a team misses qualifying, they receive the worst pit stall selections available on pit road. At Texas Motor Speedway, where pit strategy and track position are directly tied together at every stage of the race, inferior pit stalls can cost a driver multiple positions even when everything else goes right. The hill Wallace is being asked to climb on Sunday is steep, 37th place, a backup car with one night of preparation, bad pit stalls, and a 1.5-mile oval that has historically punished any driver who makes even a minor mistake. Wallace is not the only driver who arrived at Texas and left Saturday in serious trouble. Austin Dillon completed just 3 laps in practice before his engine began making abnormal noises. His best lap was a full 1.4 seconds off the pace of the fastest car in the session, a deficit that tells you everything about how little running he managed before the issues emerged. The team was forced to pull the engine entirely and swap it out before Sunday, which triggered the same automatic starting penalty that hit Wallace. Dillon will start 38th and last in the field. This creates an interesting dynamic at the back of the grid. 2 drivers, one from 37th, one from 38th, will be fighting their way through a full 38-car field on one of the most demanding tracks on the entire Cup Series schedule. Neither situation is ideal. Both are the result of mechanical or on-track disasters that were painful to watch unfold in real time. To understand whether Bubba Wallace has any realistic shot at a meaningful result from 37th, it helps to look at what he has actually done at this track over the past few years. In 2023, Wallace won the pole at Texas Motor Speedway. He led 111 laps in that race and finished 3rd. The speed at this particular track has been undeniable when things have gone his way. Then in 2024, he returned and posted a 7th-place finish. Texas has produced some of the strongest results of his career at 23XI Racing. But the present is a different conversation entirely. In his last 5 races heading into this weekend, Wallace has recorded 3 finishes of 34th or worse. 2 of those races ended before the checkered flag. The consistency simply has not been there in 2026, and whatever momentum the team was trying to build coming into Texas took a serious hit the moment that car hit the wall on Saturday. And in last year's Texas race specifically, Wallace crashed out before the finish. So the question that defines Sunday becomes very clear: which version of Bubba Wallace shows up? The driver who dominated this track in 2023 and led over 100 laps? Or the driver who has posted back-to-back DNFs and struggled to crack the top 20 in recent weeks? Not everything about this weekend was bad news for Wallace and 23XI Racing. Before the crash happened on Saturday, Coca-Cola officially announced they were returning as a sponsor for the number 23 car. This is a significant development. Coca-Cola and Wallace had a partnership going back to his early Cup Series days from 2018 through 2020, and for the past several years at 23XI Racing, he had been running with Dr. Pepper. The return of Coca-Cola signals renewed confidence from a major corporate brand in Wallace specifically, not the team broadly, but Wallace as an individual asset in the sport. Wallace has also spoken openly about how his teammate Tyler Reddick has been performing at a high level in 2026 and how that has pushed him to raise his own expectations. He has been direct about the fact that it feels overdue for him to string together a run of strong finishes and demonstrate the kind of consistency that a driver of his ability should be producing. That competitive awareness is a real factor heading into Sunday, even if the starting spot makes the path forward significantly harder than anyone in the 23XI Racing camp would have chosen. For Wallace to have any realistic chance at a strong finish on Sunday, several things need to go right simultaneously. First, the backup car has to be fast. The primary car was clearly dialed in during practice. Getting the backup to a competitive level after just one night of preparation is a major ask of any race team, no matter how talented the crew is. Second, cautions need to fall at the right moments. At Texas, the big yellow flags are what compress the field and give rear starters a window to cycle into contention through pit strategy. Without those yellows, the leaders simply drive away. Third, pit execution has to be close to flawless. With poor pit stall selection already working against the team, they need to make up for that disadvantage with speed and precision on every single stop. Fourth, and perhaps most importantly, Wallace has to stay clean in the opening laps. Starting 37th means being surrounded by other drivers who are also fighting for position in close quarters, and one mistake in the first 30 laps ends the day before it truly begins. There is one wild card worth watching. Goodyear has brought a fresh tire compound to Texas this weekend, the same build that was first introduced at Kansas last fall. That adds a layer of unpredictability to the tire behavior across the entire field, which could work in Wallace's favor or against him, depending on how the 23XI Racing team reads and adapts to the data as the race unfolds. The fan conversation around Wallace heading into Sunday is genuinely divided. One group points to the practice speed, fifth quickest at over 188 miles per hour, is not a fluke number, and argues that Wallace has the raw pace to carve through traffic and steal a top 15 or better finish regardless of where he starts. The other group looks at 3 finishes of 34th or worse in the last 5 races, adds the backup car situation on top of that, and concludes that Texas Motor Speedway is simply too unforgiving a circuit to overcome that kind of deficit in a single afternoon. Both arguments are grounded in real evidence. That is what makes Sunday legitimately compelling regardless of your expectations for where Wallace finishes. The green flag drops at 3:30 p.m. Eastern on FS1, with radio coverage available on PRN and SiriusXM NASCAR radio. Wallace told reporters after his difficult Saturday that it was a long day, but that it was going to make for a good Sunday. Whether that turns out to be accurate or painful is something only the race will answer. What is certain is that 36 cars will be starting in front of him, the backup car will be unproven, and the track has already shown this weekend exactly how little margin for error exists between a top 5 run and a trip to the garage. If you want every update, every strategic development, and every key moment as this race plays out live, hit the like button right now and subscribe to this channel. We cover NASCAR every single week and we are not slowing down.